Hello and welcome back to another episode with me reading in front of a camera. Last few episodes we went through quite a few of Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time episodes, and I think there's something different today. The story I want to read today, it's called In Between, a love story. The title may remind you of In Between and Neither, which is another story which I wrote, which I've read one chapter so far on camera. And first question probably is this story related to that story? And the answer is yes and no. It's not like it's directly related to it, but it does have some similar elements, and that's why one could see it as that's maybe if one were to continue the story of In Between and Neither, or it was slightly different, another parallel universe kind of situation, then you would end up in this situation. So this story is also one of the very few love stories which I've written. I mean, it's actually a love story. The title is not just to pull you in and then have it all turn into a kind of horror show as some stories like to do. No, this is actually a love story. So be forewarned. If you don't like love stories, you will not like this one. I wrote this story in 2017, I think. Particular reason why I wrote it, I just felt like it, I guess. It's good enough, I think. So without further ado, let's start reading. In Between, a love story. In retrospect, I'm not really sure why I agreed to come along on this trip, even if part of me knows all too well why I did just that. When Kathy asked me whether I would like to join her and a few of her friends on a weekend trip to a local hot spring resort, it at first caught me by surprise, not having expected such an offer from her. My contact with Kathy up to that point had been quite cursory, with the sharing of the usual pleasantries common among classmates, and we did work together on one school project. Yet beyond that, I have to admit not really knowing too much about her, let alone about her friends. I did, however, enjoy spending time with her, while discovering that we do share quite a few interests and goals. Without many friends of my own, most of my weekends involved just me killing time by myself. Because of this, the thought of spending a weekend together with Kathy and her friends seems like a welcome change. Thus it is that I find myself in a bus together with Kathy and 4 of her friends as we make our way to the hot spring resort. For most of the bus trip so far, I have been pretty quiet, responding to any remarks and questions and offering an occasional remark of my own, but otherwise not really being part of the group. In some ways this annoys me, while simultaneously making me realize that this is just my usual behavior as a loner without a lot of social experience. I also have to admit to feeling somewhat nervous being around beautiful young women, which Kathy and her friends all are. I keep catching myself feeling insecure and moving about like a fumbling idiot, while at the same time wondering why Kathy would have invited someone so very much not like them along. Was he just trying to be nice, maybe? That thought depresses me even more, until I fall completely silent and just stare at the landscape that passes us by. Suddenly, I feel a soft hand touching my own. Looking to my right, I can see Kathy, who up till then had been chatting with her friends, giving me a concerned look. "Is anything wrong?" she asked me. I realized then that there is nothing reasonable which I can say in response to that question, so I just shake my head, then smile at her and say, "I'm fine, just a bit tired." I can see that she doesn't believe me, but decides to let the matter rest for now. "We'll be at the resort soon," she says. "I'm sure you'll feel better once we're out of this bus." I nod meekly, feeling ever more miserable. Giving my hand a little squeeze, Kathy returns to the conversation with her friends. Again, It occurs to me just how beautiful Kathy is, with her soft long hair and delicately shaped face, so very much unlike me, I think, as I turn back to stare out of the window again. I can keep feeling the touch of Kathy's hand burning on my skin, as I simultaneously feel sick at the thought of spending a whole weekend in this Arkwood atmosphere. Even if I did think that Kathy and I have some things in common when it comes to doing school projects together, I feel foolish for even entertaining the thought that this would translate to an enjoyable experience when taking it so deep into the realm of actual friendship. Score 1 for fantasies not living up to reality, I guess. After arrival, I realized that the 6 of us will be sharing the same room, the possibility of which hadn't really occurred to me until that moment. At this point, it just adds to the awkwardness which I'm feeling. The others don't seem to be nearly as concerned as I am, though. Kathy and her friends are energetically moving about, seeming to be really enjoying themselves. The room itself is split into 2 separate rooms, a living room area and a sleeping area with bunk beds. As we put our bags into the sleeping area, I fetch a book from my bag and settle in on one of the couches in the living area, leaning my back against the left armrest and with my legs pulled up against my body. I figure that some distraction will maybe help me put my thoughts in order. "We're going to try the hot springs. Are you coming along?" someone asked, just as I have become immersed in the book's story. As I tear my thoughts back to reality, I realize that it's one of Kathy's friends who just asked me the question. Samantha is her name, I think. "Sure, I'll just need to get my swimsuit," I respond, as I get up from the couch. "Tonight, no swimsuits are allowed," Samantha responds. "Sorry," she adds, with a sly grin. "Ah," I respond, sinking back into the couch. "I'll pass then, thanks." Readying to spend a few hours by myself reading, I failed to notice at first what the others are talking about, until I catch Kathy mentioning something about not going either. "You sure? It will be very relaxing after today's bus journey," Samantha asked Kathy, as the other 3 are already preparing to leave the room. "It's fine, we got an entire weekend ahead of us anyway," Kathy responds. "Besides, there's something I have to take care of." "I see," replies Samantha, sounding understanding. "No problem, you better make up for it tomorrow though." At this point, I can feel my heart pounding in my chest. What's going on? I have no idea. I will just keep pretending to be engrossed in my book while things play themselves out. Meanwhile, I'm feeling sick to my stomach, as I can't help but feel that it's all related to me. After the door closes behind the others, it at first remains quiet. Then I can hear Kathy moving. She's moving towards me. Before I can glance up, she's already made it to the couch and more or less throws herself onto the side which I have left empty. To my surprise, Kathy doesn't say anything, but instead just giggles before sighing deeply. "Well, that all was only about 100 times more awkward than I could have imagined. Don't you agree?" she says as she looks at me. Dumbfounded, I just nod and manage a weak smile, awkwardly holding the book in my hands, unsure what to do. After what feels like an eternity, I feel the urge to say something, anything. I managed to say, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come along." At this, I clutch the book tightly and stare at its cover as though I can find answers to my current predicament there. Hearing Kathy moving, I look up to see her sliding closer to me until she can envelop my hands with hers. "Nonsense," Kathy says firmly. "I'm really glad you came and that you're here." Heart fluttering in my chest, I just look at her in confusion, caught between terror and elation. Then why did you invite me?" I ask softly. Kathy's clear laughter rings out. "I'm so sorry," she says. "I guess I really shouldn't have kept things so mysterious. I know how awkward you can be around others, even if that's not really how you are inside." I'm confident that at this point I'm giving Kathy my best deer caught in headlights expression. While the earlier feeling of terror has faded, it's been replaced with the sensation of being utterly and completely confused. What I'm trying to say is, Kathy concentrates for a moment, apparently searching for the right phrasing for what she's thinking. Suddenly, her right hand moves up from its earlier position to my cheek. As her fingertips gently caress the skin there, she moves closer to me, leaning in until her lips find mine. If I had felt pleasure before at a mere caress from her fingers, her kiss is akin to having every nerve and fiber of my being set alight. Forgetting my surroundings completely, I barely notice that my book falls, closed, onto the floor next to the couch. It's as though my body is acting on its own now, with no conscious thought or input from my side. Caressing Kathy's back with my hand, I can feel her soft, warm skin through her top. I feel myself becoming completely absorbed in all of these new, pleasurable sensations. It is the first time that I get to be this close to Kathy. While I found her smell to be pleasant before, while just sitting at the same table, being this close to her, the effect is beyond intoxicating. This combined with her soft, warm skin touching my own. Everything is warm, soft, and pleasurable as I seek to explore further. Kathy's hands aren't staying put either. I feel them caressing my neck, then my back, pausing to stroke my shoulders and arms, each touch sending bolts of red-hot pleasure through my very being. My eyes closed. Our kisses become ever more hungry until my entire universe is just as soft lips surrounded by the most exquisite pleasure imaginable. In this haze, I don't fully realize what's going on until Kathy, one of her hands having made its way down to my tummy, has undone the button of my jeans and slides inside. With a growing sense of horror, I can feel her moving lower and lower as every sensation of pleasure is replaced with ice-cold dread. "No, please, not there, please," I struggle to say, between Kathy's unrelenting kisses and caressing. Then it's all too late. As Kathy's fingers touch me down there, I can feel her freeze up, then slowly remove her hands and move away from me, with eyes filled with shock and pain. At this sight, I just curl up on the couch while covering my face with both hands, as though this will somehow shield me from the sheer agony of the situation. The pain paralyzes my mind as tears stream down my face, leaking through between my fingers. "That's why I said, not there, please," I force out. Rolling over, off the couch, I get to my feet and stumble away, clasping my half-open jeans with one hand as I make my way into the sleeping area and close the door behind me. Collapsing onto one of the bunk beds, trembling, I wrap the blanket around me and try to shut out the world as the tears just keep coming. With everything falling apart around me again, I don't know what I should do anymore. Run away is what a voice inside my mind is telling me. But to where? What's the point? Feeling more and more miserable, I do the only thing I can, which is to shut out the world and embrace the void. I must have drifted off to sleep at some point, as I'm awoken by the sound of the door opening. Heart pounding, I stare at the door opening through semi-closed eyelids. The figure standing there is framed by the light that streams in from the living area. I cannot tell who it is, other than a woman. She stands there for a moment, seemingly torn, then steps forward and closes the door behind her. Waiting again, probably to allow her eyes to adjust to the darkness, she then moves forward, using the sides of the top bunk beds to guide her steps. Ultimately, she reaches the lower bed where I am lying and halts there. Awkwardly reaching down, she touches my leg and then pulls her hand back again. "Are you awake?" Kathy whispers. At first, I want to pretend to be asleep, so that maybe she will go away again. But then a more rational part of my mind kicks in, and I realize that it will be best to just talk about it. "Yes, I'm awake," I try to say, yet my throat is so dry that I have to cough and swallow a few times before I can utter these words in an intelligible fashion. "Mind if I sit down?" Go ahead. After Kathy sits down on the bed, silence sinks down on us like a heavy blanket, feeling like it's smothering the ability to think and reason. Then Kathy sniffs, and I realize that she must have been crying all this time as well. Heart still pounding and unsure what to think or say, I just get up and sit on the side of the bed next to her, clasping my hands together, then loosening them again, repeatedly. Kathy suddenly moves her hand on top of mine, stopping the motion. Looking up at her, I can see even in this gloom that she is looking intently at me. I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that, Kathy says, choking up a bit near the end. It was the moment, it just felt right, I had no idea. I'm not sure what I should be feeling. Glad for her apology, profusely apologizing myself, explain my situation and beg for her forgiveness. That's when I realize that I'm not feeling anything, really. Just a cold, dark void, where I felt passion before, in what now seems like a pleasant but cruel dream. To my relief, I notice that I'm not feeling even angry. As I start speaking, it doesn't feel like my voice even belongs to me. I saw the look on your face. I know how you feel about me. That's okay. Everyone feels like that about me. I'm used to it. Even as I hear these words leaving my lips, I can see Kathy respond as though I've slapped her, and immediately regret what I just said. As she pulls her hand back, I can feel the cracks forming on the surface of this cold void inside my heart, then wince in pain as it shatters into a million razor-sharp fragments tearing through the surrounding tissue. Covering my face with my hands, I begin to cry again, interrupted by sobs wrecking my body. I really don't care about anything anymore. Not about myself, not about Kathy, not about anything. There's only this overwhelming sensation of pain, blotting out anything else. I cry for all that I've lost, for all that I've never experienced, for all that I will never know. I cry for having so roughly failed at simply living. In the end, I just cry because it's the only thing I know. Then soft arms wrap gently around me as Kathy's voice whispers next to me. Please, tell me what's going on. I want to understand. Swallowing a few times, I nod. I was born like this, I start, as a hermaphrodite with both female and male genitals. At this revelation, I feel Kathy's arms squeeze a bit more tightly around me. Pausing for a moment, I continue. Not being a guy or a girl isn't easy. It often gets me in awkward situations or worse. I manage a small, pained laugh at this point. Looking at Kathy in this gloomy darkness, I try to be as gentle as possible as I continue. I'm not sure what you were thinking earlier when that happened. I often have no idea what people around me are thinking. I've always buried myself in books from a young age, always ignoring this body, especially when I got bullied and harassed about it more often, or just for being different. A few tears sneak down my cheeks at this point, and I deftly wipe them away. At our school, nobody knows about it, only my direct family knows, but I've had a promise that they would keep it a secret too. I don't want anyone to know about it, because every time it just results in people hurting me, or me hurting people like this. I try to hide the bitterness in my voice when I make that last statement, but only partially succeed. Sighing deeply, I continue. I'm so sorry that I hurt you earlier like that. I've liked you for a while, but I didn't want to get closer to you because I was afraid that something like that would happen. Too late for that now, I guess. I smile ruefully at this. To my amazement, I hear Kathy laughing softly. Before I get a chance to ask her what's so funny, she pulls me into a proper embrace and plants a kiss on my forehead. You have no idea how happy it makes me to hear you say all that, it says, with relief clearly audible in her voice. But why? You're okay with all that? I ask, puzzled. Giving me some more room to breathe, Kathy looks at me with a glint in her eyes as she says, Whether I'm okay with it? I'm more than okay with it. Kathy laughs again, clearly feeling relieved. Here I was, wondering whether it was anything serious, but instead I find that you're exactly the person I thought you were, just with a few minor complications which actually explain a lot about why you are you. Then more seriously, I must confess that I had always assumed that you were just a lonely female beauty at our school. That's why I was taken aback earlier. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I shouldn't have rushed into things like that, but... Before Kathy can finish her sentence, I've moved closer to her and planted a kiss on her lips. By the time our lips part again, the silence no longer feels so oppressive. Quickly stealing another kiss from her lips, I move away again. That's for calling me a female beauty, you beautiful liar, I say, grinning. Pulling me towards her, Kathy steals the kiss back. And that's for not believing what my own eyes are telling me, she says, smiling. Returning the embrace, we spend a few moments like that, just feeling comfortable being so close to each other. What did you think when that happened earlier? I saw the shock and pain in your eyes, I say softly, loosening the embrace. For a moment, Kathy doesn't respond, and for a split second I think that maybe I've gone too far. But then she responds in a quiet, thoughtful tone. I think it was that I've had these fantasies about you for a while, just so you know. Clearing her throat in an embarrassed way, Kathy continues. Anyway, when I felt it earlier, it felt like I'd been wrong all the time. Wrong about you, wrong about myself, wrong about all those fantasies. It really hurt, to tell the truth. It was like one of those dreams which suddenly turned into a nightmare. Finding one of Kathy's hands, I squeeze it gently as he continues. But then you told me all those things about yourself, and I realized that it was me who was the fool. Just jumping to conclusions like that and even hurting you in the process. I know that it has all happened now, but it still makes me feel bad thinking about it. It's no problem at all, really. Don't beat yourself up about it or I'm going to start feeling bad about it as well, I respond, in jest. Thank you, Kathy smiles at me. Oh, and one more thing, she adds. Yes, I ask as my heart makes an involuntary flutter inside my chest. I know it's something I don't know much about, and I probably cannot understand completely, no matter how hard I try. But about your body. You really shouldn't be so hard on yourself about it. It's not your body that's the problem, it's the people around you who cannot appreciate it who are the problem. I know that I have no problem at all after all you've told me. So what if you have some extra parts? That doesn't take anything away from the rest of your body or who you are as a person. I still find you just as beautiful and attractive as I did before, and I think that everyone should feel that way. I would be more than proud to call you my girlfriend. Kathy pauses after all this, leaving me feeling dumbstruck once more. If it's okay with you, of course, she adds, awkwardly casting her gaze downwards. Futilely trying to wipe away the tears which started welling up at Kathy's early words, I try to find back my voice. It feels as though my chest has exploded with an intense warmth, the likes of which I haven't felt before. I'm filled with what I can only describe as an immense feeling of joy. Swallowing away more tears and clearing my throat, I manage to respond in a voice which I barely recognize as my own. If I'm okay with it? If I felt any happier, I'm sure one would call it an overdose of happiness. At this, we both laugh until we're feeling just filled with joyful feelings. Or maybe it's just a lack of oxygen reaching our brains. Either way, I haven't felt this great in my life before. No contest. Kathy? I whisper. Yes? I love you. After only a brief pause, Kathy responds. I love you too. I mean it, I say. I don't ever want to stop feeling like this, or stop loving you as intensely as I do right now. Cassie's response this time comes as she wraps me into another tight embrace. Resting her forehead against mine, I can see her eyes gaze deeply into my own. With her eyes adjusting to the gloom in the room, it's not nearly as dark as it had seemed before. And I will never let you go. You're more precious to me than anything or anyone I've ever known in my life. At this, Kathy deeply kisses me again. Returning her kiss with fervor, I wrap my arms around her back. When we separate to get her breath, I sigh contentedly. During the bus trip here, I felt so miserable, but I just couldn't tell you. Especially not with your friends within hearing distance, I confess. In a calm voice, it feels so liberating that I can finally just speak my mind at this point. I continue. I felt jealous of your beauty and that of your friends, with me being so ugly. I didn't understand why you had invited me to come along. Part of me even wanted to think that it was just to make fun of me or something. I pause for a moment, feeling embarrassed. It's not like you've ever been anything but nice to me, and I couldn't possibly imagine you being mean to anyone, but another deep kiss interrupts my stream of words. I understand, Kathy says as her lips separate again. If all you've ever known is for people to hurt you, it's what you naturally come to expect. Caressing my cheek again with a soft, gentle hand, she continues, speaking softly. I understand what it's like to be bullied, but I cannot fathom the intense depth of pain you must have harbored at this point after so many years of loneliness and rejection. If at all possible, I want to be there for you, for all time, to help you deal with it. Gently brushing away the tears which are streaming down my cheeks, Kathy kisses my forehead again. Embracing me once more, I find myself crying into her shoulder. As sobs of painful relief tear through my body, it feels as though for the first time crying actually helps. All those years of bitterness, of turning away from others in disappointment, not to mention feeling cursed for having been born with a body like this, all of it suddenly has stopped mattering. The happiness which I can feel blossoming inside my chest is like the first rays of sunlight after a long and endless winter. Only when I'm slumped, exhausted against Casey's chest, do my tears cease. I'm still feeling numb from so much crying, but I've never felt so light before. Suddenly noticing the soggy fabric my cheek is resting on, I faintly mutter an apology. Sorry for soaking your clothes with my tears. In response, Kathy just laughs and hugs me tightly. Come on, we better get cleaned up a bit before the others return. They have been away for a while now. I nod weakly as Kathy helps me off the bed. As we both scramble to salvage what we can of the clothes which we're currently wearing, a sudden thought occurs to me. While I force a brush through my tangled hair, I ask, You said something about having been bullied, didn't you? Yes, I did indeed. Mind if I ask what you were bullied for? I ask, uncertain of the response. I used to have braces, Kathy responds, all matter of fact. After neither of us says anything for a moment, we both burst out in laughter. Wiping away these joyful tears, I finish up my struggle with the brush and turn towards Kathy, and nearly fall over from surprise when I notice that she's topless aside from a bra, not to mention that she's facing my direction. Grinning, Kathy finishes brushing her own hair and pulls on her fresh top. As the spectacle which caught my attention before vanishes behind fabric once more, I try to hide my all too obvious disappointment. Walking over to me, Kathy hugs me. Pressed against her softness, I gladly return the embrace. All in due time, she says teasingly, laughing at my sheepish grin. As Samantha and the others return from their bath, they find Kathy on the couch, watching television, with me sleeping soundly with my head on her lap. Putting her finger to her lips, Kathy motions them to be quiet. Nodding in understanding, the four disappear into the sleeping area with broad grins on their faces to put on something comfortable before they will join the two of us. And that was the story. So, like I said before, this is pretty much the only love story which I've ever written. It definitely does have something. I think it's interesting to write a story which is really centered around just two people interacting like that, and getting something out of that which is interesting and not cheesy and feels genuine. So I think worked okay, and there's the whole aspect, of course, of it being somewhat, well, I mean, it shouldn't be unusual. It really, this kind of love should be just normal, and yeah, I guess one of the interesting aspects of this story is probably that it explores this, like, I mean, if it wasn't for the main person, who I have deliberately kept as anonymous as possible throughout the story, just for the extra effect, if the main person had been just a regular girl, then it would have been just another lesbian love story. You know, there are so many of those. They're really boring, and there's no real interesting story behind that. And now suddenly you've got some extra drama, and it's more interesting. So I think from that point of view, it definitely has this more potential for dynamism. You know the thing, and it's more enjoyable to write about because, I mean, okay, to be fair, normal love stories are rather boring. You know, just boy meets girl, girl meets boy, girl meets girl, boy meets boy, whatever. They fall in love, blah blah. You know, it's been done so often. It's kind of boring, and this is the taking it into a different area, and I think that makes it definitely interesting. I mean, I can think of other love stories that also would be interesting from a, well, haven't read that one before yet, kind of aspect, but I think it would also, I mean, I kept this one as a short story because I guess I didn't really feel like expanding it into a whole novel or something. I mean, oh my. But I can, as I mentioned at the beginning, I can see a short story like this becoming part of something larger, like In Between and Neither, that at some point the main person in that story would find love. I mean, would not be exactly the same story, obviously, but something similar. I definitely think that finding love like this is probably one of the most beautiful things ever, simply because you have this person who is deeply unhappy and feels isolated and isn't really sure, like, okay, well, I must do things, I must change things, but I don't know how or what or anything, and then this happens, and suddenly it's like this chorus of angels, and everything is wonderful and awesome, and and that's, yeah, I guess I must have a bit of a weakness for stories which have this really, really sweet, happy, super happy, overly sweet, like teeth-rotting kind of sweetness, happy endings. Sometimes you need to read those. Sometimes you just really need to have those stories. Stories that are just happy, and that even, no matter how horrible things have been, how terrible the things may have been that you went through, that's this possibility that at one point you may suddenly meet this one person at one point in your life, and suddenly everything just comes together and everything just works out. And that shouldn't be that exceptional, I don't think, and it's something where dreaming about it, reading about it, writing about it, making it a reality indirectly, just by keeping it the possibility, this little flame of expectation, of hope, of this awareness of, hey, well, Because in this story, there are two sides. And one side is not going to make the first move. The other side might. And things really only happened in this story, just like in love stories in general. It's all too often is this one little thing that one side is like, hey, well, I'm here. Let's make this happen. And, well, do you like me? You like me? Okay. Well, I like you, so everything is cool. It's not going to happen by itself. It's this whole thing about suddenly a spark, and yeah, we all know that we love each other. No, that's not really how that works. I mean, you still need to talk. There still needs to be verbal communication and some exchanging and some misunderstandings and awkwardness and really embarrassing situations sometimes and a bit of drama. I mean, this story as well. You could definitely say that there could have been a less dramatic way that things could have been handled, but this felt natural. And often, I guess, especially when you're writing about things like that, it's about trying to get into the skin of the person, which, well, for me, that's relatively easy. Like, how would this person respond? And humans, I mean, even in love stories, humans are not machines who are just like, okay, well, I love you, you love me, and okay, let's make this happen, and kissy kissy, and everything is awesome. Being human also means strife and conflict and disagreements. But if it's true love and it will really work out, then you can talk about anything, and any misunderstanding will be smoothed over, and everything will be fine, because that's just how love works. Real love, where you actually understand the other person, and you don't try to force something on the other person. You're not projecting. You really love that one person, like this person you're actually communicating with. So I guess this is a really long-winded way for me to say that love stories can be pretty complicated. They write a good one, and really interested to learn what you thought of this one, and what your favorite love stories are, what kind of things you love to see in love stories. Lovely things in lovely love stories, yes. And thank you for listening, and see you next time. Bye.